Hi, everybody. My name is Grace Bubeck, and this is a live conversation with Stephan Bodian in the series of Living from Love. Hi, Stephan. Welcome.
Hi, Grace. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. And dear, there's always technical challenges. I just need to turn something off.
Okay.
Here you are. So, what would be helpful for people who are watching is if you could let us know whether you're actually seeing the image clearly that is broadcast. Maybe just let us know on the YouTube comment thread. That would be helpful. Thank you. We've had some technical, maybe just a little doubt there. So if you could let us know that you could see us clearly, that would be helpful. So I'm doing something different today. I'll introduce Stephan by reading out his bio that I posted on the website. So let me do that. So Stephan Bodian teaches the direct approach to spiritual awakening based on the non-dual wisdom traditions of Zen and Advaita Vedanta. Trained as a Buddhist monk for decades and licensed as a psychotherapist, Stephan offers webinars, retreats, individual counseling and mentoring, and the annual School for Awakening. A close student of Jean Klein for many years, he was invited to teach in 2001 by Adyashanti. His books include Wake Up Now, Meditation for Dummies, and Beyond Mindfulness. And his website is stephanbodian.com. So here we are, Stephan, and we'll be talking about his upcoming book, which is called Beyond Mindfulness, the direct approach to lasting peace, happiness, and love.
There it is.
There you
go. Actually, it's already out. It's already out. It came out in September.
Yes, great. Yeah, and I was obviously reading a galley proof, and it's been a while ago because we were supposed to do this conversation earlier and we couldn't. It had to be postponed. So rather than talk about the book, Stephan, I'd really just like to invite you and myself and everybody else to talk about the topic, which is today's topic, which is the role of practice,
right,
in the what you call the progressive path and the direct path.
right.
And so the progressive path, as you name it, is a path whereby practice is supposed to lead you somewhere, to some goal to be achieved in the future, in time. And the direct path is obviously the pointing to what is already there. So, and yet practice, and that's what I'd like to start talking about with you, has been something very important in both our lives because we both have a Buddhist tradition as a starting point to our spiritual unfolding. So maybe you could tell us about your life as a Buddhist monk and how, not the details of it, but what the role of practice was in that
Sure.
life.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in the tradition that I practiced in, which is Zen, of course, the Zen tradition, particularly in the Soto Zen tradition, meditation is extremely important. It's almost like, in fact, they say in Zen, 1 minute Zazen, 1 minute Buddha. So the sense of just sitting itself is an expression of your awakened true nature. Not so much in the Rinzai, but in the Soto, which is what I studied. So it's almost fetishized. It's really looked up to. Zazen in itself is a sacred activity. So really from the Soto tradition, in its purest expression, there is no place to go. Sitting itself is an expression. But the way it's actually taught, and I taught with a teacher who was a combination of Soto and Rinzai, there was really an emphasis on breaking through, you know, using meditation as a way to break through the barriers, to see your true nature, to solve the koan. The first koan is, does a dog have Buddha nature? And the answer is moo. What does that mean? You know, and then they would, you know, you would be hit over the head, you know, the shoulder with a stick. There was some of that, and a real sense of energy, vitality, a push to wake up, right? And in my own experience, I basically burned out. You know, I couldn't do it. It wasn't working for me, right? It was working for some people, it seemed. You know, they were having breakthroughs, but, you know, except for a few little glimpses, you might say, it wasn't working for me. And for that reason and a number of other reasons, I left my practice as a Zen monk and went back to school to study psychology. I went back to work. I got into a relationship. You know, I ended up raising some kids. But I studied other things. I studied Tibetan Buddhism, which is also practice-oriented. And then, you know, particularly the Dzogchen tradition. And then I met Jean Klein. And meeting Jean Klein was like a bracing, you know, cold water across the face. It's like practice, you know, don't meditate, basically. Any meditation you do has only one purpose, to find out the meditator, discover the meditator. Other than that, you know, it can be misleading, right? Because it can take you away. Jean used to emphasize that meditation conditions the mind. And he said, we really want to bring unconditioned mind and discover unconditioned mind, right? So don't meditate in order to condition the mind, which is what a lot of progressive meditation is doing. It's actually conditioning the mind. And that's believed to be a positive thing, beneficial, right? To make you happier, less stressed, you know, more compassionate and loving. You know, all these qualities that one is supposed to cultivate by conditioning the mind. So, but from Jean's point of view, those are natural qualities that don't need to be cultivated. So it was very shocking in a way, because it flew in the face of everything I had been taught, and it was also very awakening. And very shortly after meeting Jean was when I had my first real awakening, you know, this deep and genuine awakening, because suddenly, you know, there was no technique there, you know, to play with. So that was my experience. And, you know, there was a time, I distinctly remember this, and I think this was early on in my time with Jean. I was sitting at a retreat, and, you know, there were quiet times when we were just sitting together. And I became really aware of how my mind was trying to meditate, you know? How it had this idea of what meditation is supposed to look like and what is supposed to be happening. And the mind was doing a very good imitation of meditation, you know? And I suddenly realized, wait a second, this is not what true meditation is about. Because then it's the mind, the separate self, that's meditating. You know? So really the question, as Jean said, was, who is the meditator? Who's meditating? If it's your mind that's meditating, what is the point? You know?
Yeah.
So that's a brief glimpse. Yeah. How about you?
Beautiful. You know, I mean, it was the same thing for me. Different. I mean, for starters, I wasn't a monk, nor a nun, but I was meditating for a long time, over 10 years probably, until I reached a point And, I have to say, and I'd like to really get into that with you, was hugely beneficial.
Yeah.
In the sense that really became much easier, happier, freer, more content, less emotionally roller coastery that way. And I reached a point where I realized with all the meditating that I had done, my mind was still very busy. It was still trying to do what it was trying to do. And even though I wouldn't have put it in those terms at the time. And so one thing led to another, and I came across non-dual teachings. And I just knew that that's what was missing. But it took a while for me to find my teacher, Gangaji. And that's when somehow the heart just blew open. The mind, it was the heart that blew open. And from that, eventually the mind also saw its own. It's hard to say, but I came to see what is really seen.
Yeah.
Well, what is the source of it all?
Exactly.
And I came to see that both the awareness and the love are just facets of this. Whereas before I had somehow maybe too much identified with the love. That was a specific kind of detour that I took that was maybe not totally clear yet at the time.
Yeah, I would say also that meditation was enormously helpful for me as well. And when I began meditation, I was a pretty anxious, stressed out person. As a student, who would really push. I pushed myself a lot and was very self-critical. And over those years of meditating, I definitely developed a deep sense of equanimity and calm. Although Zen doesn't emphasize love, so there wasn't a whole lot of love in it. But I would definitely say that it relieved the stress and the anxiety a great deal. But for me, I really wanted to really wake up. I really wanted to see deeply into my true nature. And it became very clear that meditation wasn't doing that, for various reasons, which I talk about in the book, and I think we'll get to. But, I cannot say that meditation was not beneficial, and I certainly can't say that meditation didn't contribute in some way to my awakening. Even though the awakening didn't happen while I was a monk, I think it prepared the ground in some way, so, in an unquantifiable way. So I wouldn't say to people don't meditate, although I do teach an approach to meditation, which is, you could say a non-dual approach to meditation, which of course, a lot of that I picked up from Dzogchen tradition, which teaches more in that way. Yeah.
How I'm curious, Stephan. What is a non-dual approach to meditation?
Well, a non-dual approach to meditation is basically let everything be the way it is. Sit and let everything be the way it is. Not that you have a choice, but you have a choice whether it's going to be the way it is. But you might as well sit and let it be the way it is. So that's basically what I teach.
Yeah. So basically, no doing, no effort,
no effort, no agenda. Just open to what is. Even the word open is, of course, extra. But I think that the directive of to open, let go of fixation, shall we say. The mind, and really the source of suffering is fixation. fixation of attention. We get obsessed, we get focused and narrow. So when we open, just to open, spacious, all-inclusive, as Jean finds to say, welcoming what is, that's true meditation, really.
Yeah.
And the mind welcome. The mind can only welcome to a certain degree, you see. Any doing of welcoming is an imitation, right? Welcoming is our essential nature. So when I say to do, to welcome, that is a kind of a doing, right? But that doing can allow you to fall back into the welcoming, which is who you are, So even there's a paradox of practice, because I'm giving a sort of an instruction, which is to assist you in stepping beyond all method, right? But still, I'm giving, so it's kind of paradoxical, right?
Yes, it is. I was just reminded of a certain approach to acting, where people kind of just put acting, where people just kind of physically, to kind of get into the feeling of what it is like to smile, what is expressed by a smile.
Sure, absolutely.
And it's a bit like that with practice. It's like, somehow even just the doing of opening is seen as a doing, and then it's no longer doing.
That's right. In the moment that you
welcoming.
See it, yeah, that's right. The moment that you see it as a doing, you're out of the process. You're out of the doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's like I do have a bit of an issue with people who just say, and that's basically what my teacher said, drop all doing, stop. That was her instruction, stop. Because that was the instruction of her teacher, Papaji.
That's right.
And that is very helpful, but then even stopping can be a doing.
That's right.
So everything can become a doing.
Yeah, letting go. You could say let go. Well, what is let go? Letting go is a doing. Surrender. Oh, surrender.
Yes.
Well, surrender is a doing. Ultimately, any directive you give can be a doing, but until you find yourself in non-doing. Again, that's who you are, non-doing. You can't do non-doing, despite the Wei Wu Wei, right? Means do non-doing, right? Yeah, that's again the paradox. That's from the Taoist tradition, Wei Wu Wei, do non-doing, right? Yeah.
Yes. So what I find is really an ally in all of that is that at some point we cannot help but notice opening or the welcoming or the.
That's right.
It is, it's like that noticing of grace.
Yes.
And that of course comes from true awareness, from a place that does not do, that does not imitate.
That's right.
And so for me, practices just don't seem to be so problematic anymore, because my senses, they lead people to that kind of noticing sooner or later, especially when they're told, when they're invited to notice when they're doing it, or when they're making an effort, or when they're, just trying to do it instead of actually doing it.
Yeah, in the book, of course, I address this issue. I'm particularly critiquing mindfulness, because that's the title of the book. It's also, I have taught mindfulness both as a monk and in Meditation for Dummies. So, and since mindfulness is becoming so popular, I thought it was important to critique mindfulness, so people don't get a mistaken understanding. And I think it's possible to do mindfulness in a certain kind of an obsessive way, where you never let go of the method. You become really, really expert at doing mindfulness. You even develop an identity as a really excellent, expert, seasoned mindfulness meditator. And your mind becomes so good at it that you never fall out of it, as you were describing, into the awareness that's always already present, because you're so focused. And I've met people like that, 10, 20 years or more of mindfulness practice, who never fall out of it, So unless there's some invitation to fall out of it. So in other words, if you hold meditation in a greater view, in a non-dual perspective, then there is that potential. But if you hold it in the framework of, I meditate in order to cultivate certain mind states, become more relaxed, more focused, more present, more compassionate, or whatever, and you're doing it to develop in a certain way, like there's an agenda there, there's a program, and there's, in a sense, that there's something out there in the future that I need to get to attain. I think that view, because the view that underlies meditation is really important. The Tibetans really stress this, right? The importance of the view. You can't just take a technique separate from the view that goes along with the technique. So if Jean Klein used to say, you can use progressive techniques in service of the direct approach. You see. So any technique can be used in service of the direct pointing. But the underlying understanding needs to be that it's always already the case. Awareness is always already your essential nature. It's always looking out through these eyes, experiencing life through this body and mind. Indeed, it is what you are. That understanding completely changes the nature of the meditation you do, even if you do mindfulness.
Yes. I totally agree, and it seems to me like even that can be by the mind. Even the view can become just a view rather than a truth.
Yeah.
Truth. In a live reality. So it's like that. That corruption of the truth, that imitation of, that the mind does.
Right.
It's always a possibility, and of course, for everybody who starts off, that's the only reality. They will try to meditate. I try to get better and less stressed and happier through meditation, and I don't feel there was anything wrong with that.
No, I don't think
because
so.
my sense is also, at some point, awareness will want to break through.
Yeah,
and it'll find a way. It'll find a way by, somehow getting a sense of the limitation of what you're doing, or beautifully described in your book. The witnessing stance can become so dry and so disconnected from life.
Yes.
That at some point people know that something's not quite right.
Yes, I would agree.
Start looking.
Yes, I hope that's the case. I think in most cases, or many cases, that is the case. And again, if I'm working with someone, let's say in psychotherapy, counseling, whatever, many people, I will recommend mindfulness.
Yes.
It has tremendous benefits. Yes. As long as you understand that you can get stuck in certain ways, that it has its limitations. And that's what I say in the book. I at the beginning, I say, how highly I think of mindfulness, what a great practice it is, and yet there are limitations that as long as we're aware of the limitations, then we won't get stuck. Yeah. hopefully. Yeah.
Yes. You know, I was going to ask you about this because as a psychotherapist, or, you know, also myself as a therapist and meditation teacher, you know, I get people who are really just wanting to be less stressed.
Yes.
You know, who wanting to get better. And just always very aware of when I say things like, and of course I can't help saying those things in the moment, they just come out anyway. I know they don't understand it. When I say things like, you know, this just being aware, that's your true nature. You know, for them it's just another concept. I know that. Or, you know, love is who you really are. Well, that's just another concept that can become
Well,
just
I
another
would call
belief.
it a pointer. I would call it a pointer, you see.
Mm-hmm.
It may be a concept, but if it's used as a pointer to the
Mm-hmm.
truth that underlies the concept, then it's not a dead concept. It's a live concept. It's pointing. So with that understanding, you know, if you say to people, you know, what I'm saying, don't take it for truth, just take it as a pointer to truth.
Mm-hmm.
Then it changes, right? It changes the relationship to those concepts. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But you see, the thing is, they can only take it. It can only become a belief until it's a known reality. So even though you say it's only a pointer, it's like, you know, that can only be true when it comes to be true.
That's right.
Do you know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, no,
there's
of
this
course, of course. Yeah, of course.
veiling that happens through the mind. And,
Absolutely, absolutely.
you know, I don't know. I mean, my sense is, well, you know, the veils fall when they fall. And I can't do anything about that. You know, I can only invite
That's right.
and be in the expression in the moment of what wants to be said. And
Yeah,
if what wants to be said is a pointer, then it's a pointer. And if it's a meditation instruction, you know, then it's a meditation instruction.
absolutely. I
If it's,
totally agree. Yeah.
yeah, it's like somehow, you know, we don't know, we can only ever express an invitation. And when that invitation is truly heard, we don't know.
That's right. It's a great mystery. You know, I think that you know, as Jean Klein used to say, you know, we can only, with the mind, we can only go to the precipice, what he called the precipice, to the edge of truth. And then we need to be taken. Then we need to be taken.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's that moment of being taken, which is completely unpredictable, it cannot be accomplished. You know, and people are constantly coming to me, of course, as a teacher, as a counselor, and saying, "What can I do?" Right? How can I make this happen? How can I make this happen? And I say, which is, you know, a pretty classical way to describe it, is that awakening is like an accident. You can only make yourself accident prone, right? And there are ways to make yourself accident prone, but ultimately it happens to you. It comes upon you. You know, it takes you. Truth takes you.
Yeah.
It ambushes you, you could say. And that will only happen when it happens. And you can certainly make yourself more accessible to truth by reading the teachings, sitting quietly, doing some self-inquiry, hanging out with people who are similarly oriented. These are all things that are classically talked about in the Upanishads, you know? This is how you make yourself accident prone. But the awakening itself, who knows? It's a mystery.
Yes.
It's a mystery.
Yes. And you know, the making oneself accident prone, that's where the practice is really invaluable. I mean, I know that for myself, my mind was all over the place.
Yes.
Before I started meditating.
Me too.
And meditation actually allowed the mind to really, because you keep bringing the mind back to whatever your focus is, whatever the meditation is about. So somehow, there is the mind is trained, and that's actually a good training, because when it comes to it, it's like, even moments of true insight, when the mind is not trained, that may be a bit.
No, I think what you're saying.
But I'll say it anyway.
Yeah.
When the mind is not trained, when it doesn't have staying power, it'll just go off somewhere immediately. A mind that has become still, stay, and it's able to and more into this, unless it's taken so strongly that they can't help it. But not everybody is, people have just glimpses.
No.
When their mind is able to stay with that glimpse.
Yeah, to abide.
That's when
rest. Mm-hmm.
Yes. That's when the glimpse becomes more than a glimpse.
Yes, I would agree with that. And that's why, like, for example, the Tibetan tradition, they do something called shamatha practice, which is, stilling the mind, stabilizing the mind. Then they do vipassana, which is different from vipassana practice, which is more about insight. And then you get to the highest stage in the Dzogchen tradition of non-meditation, of simply abiding. But, they have these stages. Again, the problem with those stages is you could be there forever. But there's a reason for it, and I have great respect for these traditions. They understand how the mind is. And most of the people who come to me for mentoring, counseling, for teaching to the school or other things that I offer are people who've meditated for years, for the most part. So I don't have to do that with them anymore. They've already done that, So we're at the next stage, But for people who are still dealing with basic issues of, anxiety and depression and a mind that's all over the place, yes, by all means, follow your breath, It's great. Be present. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, I would say in my own case, I had a very well-developed mind. Again, I was an intellectual. My mind was all over the place, very active, busy mind, And it took years and years. I always said I was the hardest nut to crack, the most difficult student, the one that needed the most training because I had such a stubborn mind, So I totally understand when people come to me and talk about how their mind just drives them crazy. I totally get it. And so 10 years of meditation, facing a wall, helped enormously, Short of being beaten over the head with a 2x4, that was probably exactly what I needed, right? Yeah. So it helped me, and I think it has benefit, for sure. Again, as long as we understand its limitations. And as you say, maybe if we don't understand its limitations, we'll get there anyway. But it helps to begin with to understand the limitations.
Yes. For sure. I mean, that's probably a shortcut for some people, to know from the start that there is a danger of, just building up a new identity as the perfect meditator.
That's right. The identities that get built up. It would have helped me to know that, I think. And again, one of the benefits of meditation, Ajahn talks about this, and I certainly had this experience as well, is that, he said the only thing he really got out of meditation is he got to the point where he was a failed meditator.
Yes.
he knocked himself out, and then the second point, the meditation fails. It just doesn't work.
Yes, absolutely.
And then you,
Yeah.
then you,
I mean, that's the point that I reached,
Yeah.
It's just like obvious that it wasn't doing the job. So I needed to look elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. I can remember that a retreat where I just sat there facing the wall and I was like dry as a prune. Nothing was happening. I was really focused, but it was dead. And I thought, this is it. I've reached the end. Got nothing else.
Yes.
You know.
Yes. Yeah. And, it's interesting you mentioned Adya because, he was such a driven meditator. And my sense is also that there's certain, and that's a kind of, maybe a more psychological insight, but I think very valuable, is that people are driven in certain ways. And somehow that drivenness, works itself out through the meditation.
Right.
When it's kind of become porous enough, then meditation doesn't work anymore. And then people are ready to open in those more direct ways,
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I was like that too, very driven, and I had to pretty much wear out that intensity. I was very, like Ajahn, very intense. And so, I think in some way, wore it out, it softened it, and it showed the limitations of effort, really. I was certainly young, very young, and then you have to fall into the yin, the receptive. Because really, I think waking up happens in a receptive mode. It doesn't happen in a yang mode, really. A yang mode, again, can be helpful, but ultimately it's to being open, to being receptive.
That's so interesting because I'm just thinking, like, actually what is helpful for women maybe more is the actual the witnessing, because the witnessing takes us out of the immediacy of the emotional entanglements. So that's actually very helpful, if you have a tendency towards too much yin and too much kind of emotionality.
Right.
So it's helpful because that's where the emotional tendencies get worn out. They're less, the grip of them becomes less strong. And
Absolutely.
That can be so helpful, to just see, how they play themselves out. And similarly, to just see how the thinking, goes in its usual routine, same old,
Absolutely. Yeah. Whether you're preoccupied with thinking or preoccupied with emotion, the witnessing is very helpful. And then ultimately you discover yourself as the witness.
Yes.
As I call awakened awareness. Awareness awakens to itself as the ground of being. That's, what awakening is, and that is the fruition of the witnessing.
Yes. I'm just thinking, the witnessing, it's like a mask of the awakened mind until the mask is ready to be dropped. It's like somehow it needs to take that disguise. But in taking that disguise, it's like it actually becomes more obvious to itself, because what is the habit that's created is a habit of being aware.
Yes.
And from being aware, you get taken more easily to awareness than through being totally chaotic and driven by this, that, and the other.
Yeah, absolutely. I think initially we are glued to our experience. There's no space. we're unable to get any space around our experience. We're totally emotional, totally caught up in our thoughts. This is the way most people live, right? Certainly the way I lived until I discovered meditation. And then as we meditate, we develop more space, right? More space around inner spaciousness, which then becomes, again, awareness. You become more aware, and then eventually, as you become more spacious and not as Velcro to your experience, you become aware of awareness, right? That's a major step. Oh, awareness. Wow, there's awareness here. And this awareness is not the same as my thoughts. That's a big step. That's almost like an awakening unto itself. I am awareness. And then you discover, that awareness is what I am. And then eventually, of course, awareness is what everything is. It's not separate from what it's aware of. That's, again, the full fruition. But the first step is like, just being aware of your experience. That's like major for most people. Right? And this is where mindfulness can be very helpful. Spaciousness, inner spaciousness.
And that's, I think that's where the mindfulness-based stress reduction, approach is incredibly helpful to so many people, because it creates like that inner spaciousness, like a resting place that people can go to.
That's right.
Rather than being totally taken in by their thoughts and their feelings and reactions.
I agree.
So it's like somehow what strikes me is that for the beings that live in time, there's an evolution in time that happens, and the mindfulness, the creating awareness, is such an important step. The only step. It's not the final step. It's.
That's right. That's right. It's an entry point for most people, for many people, and I think a very valuable entry point.
Yeah. As it was for us.
As it was for us. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, Stephan, would you like to, is there anything else that you would like to add at this point? Because
I think we're good. I think when we have a dialogue with people, things will come up and come out that will be very rich, I'm sure, for everyone. So I'm happy if you want to invite people to join at this point. Yeah.
Yes, that's what I was going to suggest, that if people want to ask questions or join us on the Hangout, you can do that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to post the link to the actual Hangout on the YouTube thread. I'm going to do that right now. It'll take a little bit of time before that comes live on the YouTube thread. Bear with me for a few seconds. Okay. And you can also ask a question on the YouTube comment thread. So while waiting for people to come on or ask their questions, I'm going to just go to the YouTube comment thread and see what's happening there. Oh dear. Okay, so Satori says reception is not very good. Voices go and come again for a while. Moving colors, and there's a snowy sound coming and going. Sorry to report. James says, is Stephan's video distorted to everybody else? Yeah.
Whoops, do we have a technical issue? Okay.
technical issue, but they say that the sound is good, so
Sound is okay.
hopefully
Okay.
that's good. So, Stephan, I'm so sorry. Your image seems to not be working well.
Oh, I wonder why. I don't know.
Yes.
You see me okay.
Yeah.
You don't see distortion?
I see you fine, but people say your image is pixelated.
Huh. Wonder why.
Yes.
I have a pretty high speed internet connection here, so usually it's, you know, I've done this on Zoom, but in the past, but don't know what else we can do really.
Maybe your frequency is too high and interferes with the Google frequencies.
Or maybe I just have a weird and distorted face. And it's revealing itself here. Anyway, sorry if there's any distortion here. That hasn't happened in the past, but who knows? Who knows what's going on?
Mm-hmm. Well, here we are. So I'd still like to invite people, if you have questions or comments, or you want to come onto the Hangout, to please feel free to do that. Ask your questions on the YouTube comment.
Yeah, the main thing is the audio. I don't think seeing me particularly enhances anything.
Yes.
It was nice to get the face-to-face connection, of course. But.
Oh, absolutely. You know, it's part of the blessings of YouTube.
Yes.
Not to be underestimated, I would say. There's Ifta Weiss Roy, who has a question. Au revoir. His question is, wouldn't you recommend a daily sit of 30 minutes or so just to be able to stay present enough for awareness?
I would say if you're drawn to sit for 30 minutes a day, then by all means do it. You know, I definitely recommend to people a daily sitting practice, or you know, at least to sit when you're drawn to it. And again, you'll have a sense of when you're drawn to it. If your mind gets really very, very busy and you get stressed out, then obviously you'll be drawn to sit. Right? Or if you feel you've lost your connection with your being, then you'll be drawn to sit. So I would say to accept the invitation that your own being is putting out to sit down, sit quietly. But yes, if you're drawn to sit for a half an hour a day, please, by all means do that. The main thing is not to make meditation into a kind of a routine, you know, a rote routine. Let it be fresh in each moment. And again, that's why we say, let everything be the way it is. You know, one of the drawbacks of any technique is that it can become very mechanical, you know? That was my experience with Zen practice. It became dry and mechanical. So let it be fresh. Each moment is fresh. Be open to the moment. You know, if there's any meditation instruction, that's it. Be open to the moment.
Yeah, beautiful. You know, I have to admit, I meditate pretty much every day in the morning. For me, it's just a way of
starting the day.
Starting the day, you know, it's like having breakfast and brushing my teeth. I just love meditating. You know, there's something about sitting quietly that to me is just incredibly nurturing.
Yeah.
I don't do it to get anywhere. I just do it because it's just part of this expression of life, you know. And I'm not giving myself a line about it whether it's okay or not. It's just I like doing it, so I do it.
That's right. Yeah, and nourishing.
And of course, it's very helpful.
Nourishing is the words you use. I think that's beautiful. You know, why do Why do you eat a nice breakfast or lunch? You know.
I like doing it, so I do it.
Because it's nourishing.
Nourishing.
And of course, it's very helpful.
Nourishing is the word you use. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Why do you?
Whoops, getting a little feedback here. Oh, hello,
Yes.
Helga.
Yeah, somebody just joined. Somebody just joined the Hangout. Hi, Helga. And Helga, I muted your microphone because you still have your YouTube video on. So if you could or turn it off altogether, that's what interferes with the sound. See whether you've been able to turn it off. Okay, Helga, you can. Yes, with the sound. See whether you've been able to turn it off. So Helga, go back to the YouTube watch. Okay, Helga, you can image. Yes.
Oops, yeah, there's feedback. There's some feedback.
Oh, yes, yes. People need to, I'll just say that generally, when you join the Hangout, please either mute your YouTube page, you know, the YouTube video before you join us, or just switch off that window, you know, just exit from that window. Otherwise, we get a feedback loop. So Helga, please join us again, but maybe before joining, just mute your YouTube video. And in case you don't know how to do that, on the YouTube video where you see the speaker, you just click on the speaker and then you can join. So please do try again. It may take some time to do that.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Yeah.
Join us?
I don't see any more questions for the moment. No, that's. I don't know how to do that. On the YouTube video where you see the speaker. Okay, so Iftar's come on. So Iftar, you need to switch off your. There you go. Hi, Iftar. Hello, Iftar. Can you hear us?
Join us?
I don't. Hello. Any more questions for the moment? Oh dear. So Iftar, try and turn off your YouTube watch page. Hello. Hello, Iftar.
Hi.
Hi, there you are. Welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah. Do you have a question for Stephan?
I already sent one and I'll answer, and yeah, if there's no one else wanting to ask, I would love to.
Yes.
Maybe I.
Oh,
please.
Go right ahead.
So yeah, I mean, I kind of like, I'm not sure where I am right now, but regarding what you both described, I started my journey of meditation and spiritual work in like 6 years ago, and I don't know, for the first year or two, I was really doing, like, at first I was doing like hardcore noting practice, like also during the day, and each day 45 minutes at least, and it was good. And it at some point it didn't work, you know. It's just, I was, like you said, I was exposed more to non-duality, and it was just, it made more sense, like yeah. And at some point, just this noting practice, it didn't make so much sense, and the whole structure kind of fell away. That's not to say that like my ego fell away or something like that, but just the structure of like how I meditate, what am I doing when I'm meditating, became kind of like a blur. And when people started asking like, hey, what are you doing? And when you sit down, So like at the first couple, like at the first few years, I could describe it, but like it's been at least like 2 or 3 years when I just don't know what to answer. Like I don't know what I'm doing when I sit, and to be frank, I until now it's kind of like in my mind, it's kind of like a problem. It's like I should go back to my structure, or I should know what I'm doing, or it's like in my mind, there's still kind of like this problem that I can't sort out my meditation for years now, for like or something.
So, so when you sit down again, you sit down, and then what happens?
Yeah. So, well, if I have if I have enough energy, then what's eventually happening is I'm usually almost always drawn to like asking who is the meditator in some way or another. Like doing inquiry into who is it that's meditating, thinking. Yes, pretty much that.
So most of your time is spent inquiring?
Either that or just sitting. I don't know, just sitting and sinking into like, I don't know, the most stillness that I can fall into.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's tricky, how to sit, because it is possible to sit and just space out, right, for 30 minutes. And I would say that largely that is not very helpful at any level, right? At the same time, the other extreme would be to sit and be very focused. And again, I'm not saying it's bad, but to sit and be really focused, like focused on the breath, labeling or noting, as you said, is an example of that. Every little thing that comes up, you're naming it. It's like thinking, feeling, sensing, hearing. It's like that's really okay. So, but there is a kind of, again, a way, a doing, non-doing, where you can sit down with a certain intention and a certain orientation, and then fall back into the openness, right? So you begin with a certain intention and orientation, almost like a certain instruction, and then at a certain point you just let go of that. So I think there is some value in a certain amount of, like, again, orientation when you sit.
Yeah.
To sit, and Adyashanti, for example, has his true meditation, which is a description which he wrote long time ago. It's been around since even before I met him in '99. It's just a basic description. It's basically how I teach meditation, which is to really just be open to what is. If you sit with that intention, and then see what happens, and then eventually you may find that inquiry wants to happen. But if you just do inquiry without allowing yourself to settle in some way, it can become very mental very quickly.
Yeah.
Does that resonate, what I just said?
Yeah, it does. And I think some like a lot of times that's what happens, like how you described it. And I might just like notice thoughts, or it will be pretty quiet, and when there will be thoughts here and there, I will kind of like do some kind of a noting in that moment.
And that will bring you back to the stillness.
Like, in a way, maybe sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. Ultimately, we find our way, don't we? You find your own way. There are different ways of sitting. You find your own way in a way that feels authentic, and nourishing, relaxing. I mean, ultimately, of course, it's about connecting with being, right? With the being that's already present, the awareness that's already present, you know. So however you find your way into that, whatever works for you, everyone's different. But when you found a way, then stick with that.
Yes.
You want it to be alive again, not dead as much as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes maybe we want to do meditation and just stop everything, and then we find out it doesn't stop.
Yeah, right. So we don't try to stop it. Yeah, trying to stop it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it ultimately, you know, the more we try to stop it, the noisier it gets. You know, the mind can't kill the mind. It's impossible. It's like a dog chasing its own tail. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I think there might be like you said, shamatha, or, you know, absorption places, like, or yeah, places in the mind that you can really like feel there's nothing, but this is not it, or it's not the loveliness maybe that you're talking about, and being the beingness.
Yeah, it's very tricky. It's very subtle. You know, in the Dzogchen tradition, they're very careful to steer you away from what are actually like dead places. You know, where there is no aliveness, where there is no brightness, where there is no awareness. You can easily fall into a kind of dead zone. You know, there's nothing happening, but there's also no awareness. You know, it may feel still, but there's no aliveness to it. There's no light there. So it's, finding our way with this is one of the most important and also tricky and subtle things to do, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe it's the difference between like control and no control.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. You kind of start out with a little I like to say orientation. It's kind of like you're orienting in a certain way. You're not controlling, but you're orienting. You have a certain intention, a certain orientation, and then you let go.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Okay, good.
Well, thank you, Ifta. That's great.
Yeah.
Where are you calling from?
I'm right now in Slovakia, but I'm an Israeli actually. So
Oh, in Israel, actually. Oh, wonderful. Well, it's so great to have you here. Lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you, Ifta, for coming on. And, I just like to, I thought that exchange was really helpful for a lot of people, in that it brings up a point that I find is so important, which is that how we finally glimpse our own nature, very individual.
Yes.
It's so personal at the same time as it is so impersonal. It's like somehow the access route is so very personal. And that space of meditation is often the most intimate space. And it's so good to be able to check that with a teacher. Like if that did with you, it's so be able to somehow what it is like for this person or that person, and to get feedback, because the orientation can be steered a bit this way or a bit that way.
That's right. That's right.
And where dead ends can be clearly seen for what they are, and being able to, in that kind of exchange, is so important.
Yeah, I agree. The relationship with the teacher is so important. I had the good fortune of having some wonderful teachers, Suzuki Roshi in my early years of Zen, Jean Klein, Ajahn Shanti. So, and to be able to sit with these people in close exchange and get their transmission and also the subtle pointers. So there's nothing quite like that. Yeah. There's no right or wrong way to do meditation. There's your way.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And you find your own way. It's very. I always say to people, you are the path. There is no path outside of you.
And the paths are so very unique, so very individual. And even as we recognize similarities,
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and the beauty of the internet is that it allows people to, even with people who are far away, they don't have to travel to go to a retreat with, this teacher or that teacher, they can just contact them.
Right.
And have a phone session or an internet call or something. And
that's a lot of what I do in the counseling and mentoring is this kind of very subtle, very individual, very intimate kind of instruction.
Yes. And how beautiful how that's possible these days. I just love it. I love the internet.
It's amazing. Well, Ifta from Slovakia via Israel, and Helga, I'm not sure where Helga is from, but probably.
Yeah, Helga is a fellow Canadian. Helga, I'd encourage you to come back on.
Yes, please.
Keep trying. You'll manage. In the meantime, Stephan, there is a question on the YouTube comment thread, so I'm just going to read that out to you, by Leslie Young. He asks, are all teachings essentially a form of conditioning?
That's a good question, huh? Are all teachings essentially a form of conditioning? Yes, you could say. But again, I really, when I teach, I always say at the very beginning, take what I say as pointers. Don't believe a word I say. I hope you'll leave with less than when you came. These are always my caveats at the beginning of any retreat or course that I offer. Don't take anything for truth. Otherwise, it is indeed conditioning you. And yet, these are powerful pointers. And I think words have their part. Concepts have an important role to play in pointing to truth itself. They are not truth. And I think there are people, who read the teachings and read Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta, and some of the other, contemporary teachers, and they learn how to speak the Advaita speak, and they've got it all down, and it's all very perfectly well developed, but it isn't truth, you see, just talk, So again, the talk is helpful, but there are pointers to being understanding, to direct apperception, direct recognition for yourself. So don't take them as belief systems, take them as pointers, and then they can be, I think, very helpful.
Add something to this?
Yes.
Because, Leslie, it's so very subtle, because at the same time, it's like we cannot help but express truth in that form. So yes, it's conditioning, but at the same time, it's almost like, one form may resonate more with you than another form. Form may actually resonate so fully with you that the truth starts, starts just coming alive, and then the words themselves are no longer they're not a limiting factor. They're actually an enabling thing. Like when Stephen says pointers, I don't really like the idea of pointers. I mean, that's just me. I like to see words or expressions as invitations. Invitations to go directly to whatever it is that the words are expressing, are always expressing in a very limited way because they're words. But, it's like how beautiful that we have words, how beautiful that we have different ways of expressing the truth, because some ways resonate more with some people and other ways resonate more with other people. And if it doesn't resonate with you, then that's okay. But if it does, how beautiful, because then, you're not conditioned by those words. You're actually freed by those words. So,
I would totally
conditioned
agree.
and
and that's what pointers means. It seems like you don't like the word, but pointers are pointers are in fact invitations, because the words and the concepts are pointing to something beyond words, and in that pointing there is an invitation to have the experience directly for yourself. And what is true is that some pointers or invitations work for some people and others work for other people. So what I always tell people is that, go with the ones that work for you and don't try to figure out the ones that don't resonate for you. When you hit some words and concepts that really light things up for you and really make things alive for you, then just keep coming back to those. And just let those continue to work in you and on you. Because my own awakening, and this is true, I think, for many people, happened when a phrase that Jean Klein had used many times came to me while I was driving in my car. And just that phrase was powerful enough as a pointer, an invitation, to blow everything apart, right? So those words, those phrases, those live words, as we say in Zen, or pointing out instructions is the Dzogchen term, are, they're alive because they come from the truth and therefore are invitations back to the truth, you see? But only certain ones are going to work for you. So again, like we were saying, everything's idiosyncratic. Whatever works for you, go with that. Because what I find is some people they'll try to reconcile this teaching by a certain person with this teaching by another person, and they're mixing and matching. It's like, forget it. Just go with what works for you. I had the good fortune of only hearing Jean Klein for years. I didn't know anything about Advaita Vedanta. I didn't read anyone else. I didn't read Ramana Maharshi or Nisargadatta. I just listened to Jean Klein and read Jean Klein. That was great. That resonated for me. So go with what works. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Yeah, I love what you're saying. That the words that are live, that is so, because they're so powerful.
Yeah, they're so powerful. And words alone, like in my experience, have the power to turn things upside down, especially words that are paradoxical, because paradox is the core of the mystery. Is when the mystery expresses itself in words in the mind, it expresses itself as paradox. Inevitably, you see. It's this and this, yeah, and this and this and this. The mind can't conceive of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Let me just check back in with YouTube. Ifta Keith Dowman, the Dzogchen teacher, said in one of his talks not to listen to the symbols or the words, but the message that the message is in the pure sound of the talking.
There you go. There you go. It's what's behind the words. Yeah.
Yes.
It's in the source of the words. You know, the words are inviting you back to the source from which the words arose. Anyone else out there? Hopefully the others listening, perhaps. We could get you to join in. And if you don't have a question, you could also, as Ita just did, just offer your insight. You know?
Yes, absolutely. Just hang out with us.
Hang out with us.
Come on to the hangout and hang out in the...
Yes.
Yeah. I'll just check whether there's a... yeah, there's nothing else. Let's see, is there anything that comes to you that you want to say, Stephan?
There's so much to say, of course, and ultimately there's nothing to say, right? But you know, I always like to emphasize that the mind, and we've been saying this, of course, the mind cannot figure it out. You know, and I have so many people who are trying to figure it out at the moment. I think maybe particularly men, since we seem to be, you know, more prone to that. But not entirely. You know, you cannot figure it out. You cannot, you know, it just won't work. It's gonna come upon you. It's gonna grab you. It's gonna take you. It's gonna, you know, again, kidnap you, shall we say. The truth will kidnap you. So the main thing is to be open to it. That's the key. And so when you read, there's so much available now on YouTube and in books. You know, I mean, I've written several books. Aj has written half a dozen books. You know, there's so many books out there. I would say read sparingly, slowly, and let it work on you. You know, and you know, I think initially you're trying to get a conceptual framework in which to organize what you're receiving. And I think that's helpful in the beginning. But then at a certain point, you've got the conceptual framework. Now just read the things that are alive, like we've been talking about, that really are, you know, they leave you puzzled and curious and, you know, burning perhaps with some desire to see it for yourself. Those are the things that you come back to again and again. It's working on you. And then just read those sparingly. You know, again, this is at a certain point. You know, same with the YouTube videos. Don't use the YouTube videos to gain information. You know, watch the YouTube videos again with that in that receptive beginner's mind, that you're open to being, you know, in any moment, just a single phrase of one of these teachers has the capacity to wake you up. Be open to that possibility. That's what I would say.
Beautiful. Yes. Yes. And there is another question that came in, Stephan.
Okay.
Let's read that. Anyway, Ellen Mara, I think, Ellen Mara. I've just joined this stream, so this question might have been answered already. But I'd like to know, do you have any tips for beginners beginners who are just getting started with meditation?
or with meditation. Well, it's kind of the first part of what we talked about today, but you know, the basic instruction that I usually give. Again, it depends on what you want from your meditation, and this is also something that we didn't talk about. You know, what are you coming to meditation for? If you're coming to meditation for, you know, easing your stress, you know, relaxing your body, helping with focus and concentration, you know, helping with depression, anxiety, things like that, then mindfulness meditation is wonderful. You know, it's great, by all means. If you're coming for awakening, then I would say a slightly different approach would be, like we talked about earlier, to sit and let everything be the way it is. Open to what is. And you may begin by being aware of your breathing. Again, this is a great way to begin. And again, in my books, Meditation for, well, actually more Wake Up Now. Meditation for Dummies is mindfulness. Wake Up Now and Beyond Mindfulness have more of the non-dual meditations, more guided meditations that invite awakening. But to sit and begin by shifting your awareness from your thoughts to your bodily felt experience. And this could take the form of being aware of your breathing, you know, the breath as it's coming and going. You could do that for 5 or 10 minutes, you know? You could do it for 30 minutes. That's the basic mindfulness meditation. When your attention's drawn off, come back to the awareness of the breath. And then at a certain point, you can just let go of that form, let go of that focus, and open your awareness to just be open to whatever is occurring right now. You know? Sounds, tastes, smells, touch, thoughts, whatever. Just wide open. Mind like the sky, you know? Sky doesn't refuse or grasp onto anything. It just allows what is to be the way it is. So, you know, if you did that on a regular basis, I think you might find that very helpful. But again, mindfulness is great. What I just described is a kind of more advanced practice, you could say. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, thanks, Stephan. I just gave a talk locally yesterday on meditation.
Yeah.
And, you know, there were complete beginners there. And we did some little snippets of different kinds of meditation.
That's right. That's right. And
For people just to experience, you know, just to experience how, what can be a focus for meditation so that the mind can get into just focusing on that, coming back to that when it gets distracted.
That's right. Yeah, having something that the mind can come back to when it wanders off is a good thing. The breath is, that's the main reason people do and have done for thousands of years, mindfulness of the breath. As you put it, an anchor or a refuge that the mind can come back to again and again when it, you know, the mind wanders off, awareness comes back to the breath. Or it can come back to just being open and present. Again, a more advanced practice,
Yes.
because it's difficult to know what that means until you've practiced being present in a way like mindfulness. So, yeah. Wherever you feel drawn.
Yes, yes. Yeah, beautiful. You know, and I mean, there's just always going to be people at different levels, and
Yes.
it's somehow, you know, the beauty of practice is that it can take people to a different level where they're then able to, you know, when they're in the habit of bringing their mind back to what is there, whether it's the breath or whether it's body sensations, you know, then they can come back to what is, just whatever is happening.
Yeah, ultimately it's about discovering awareness, really,
Mm.
and coming to rest in awareness. You know, that's really helpful. And again, you mentioned the school. I do offer this school, which I suddenly realized, I should probably mention the school again. I do offer this school, which begins in January, a 5-month intensive program of meditation, self-inquiry, teachings, geared toward awakening. So for those of you who want to really take a deep dive, school is a great way to go on the website.
Mhm. Great. Yes, and you'll have the link to the website on the Living from Love website. And,
Great.
the address is simple. It's stephanbodian.com if you want to go there directly. So, comments. There's Julien Harris, who says, "Thank you, Stephan. That was very helpful, reassuring." I'm not sure what part he refers to, but obviously, you addressed his
Oh, great.
his query without him having even expressed it. And there's Nike Dunwald, who says, "You mentioned there was not much talk about love in your Zen times. Conditional love after stroke prior to awakening."
What about it? Yeah, I think awakening, my experience is awakening just opens the heart wide open, as you said. We talk about spiritual awakening, what is it that awakens? Awareness awakens to itself. What is, and the heart is, in a sense, released to be compassionate. We don't have to cultivate compassion, but when we wake up to our inseparability with all of life, love just naturally flows forth. And ultimately, you could say love is what reality is made of. That's certainly my understanding or my experience. We don't talk, or at least the emphasis is on awakening and awareness, but the heart and love just naturally seem to blossom when we discover who we are. That's my experience. We are love, right? We are consciousness. So there isn't a separate emphasis on love, on cultivating love, necessarily. At least the way I'm a teacher, as a teacher. Do you have anything, Grace?
I was just reflecting on this, I am very aware of there being sometimes, for some people, it's the heart that opens first, somehow.
That's right.
And for some people, it's the mind that opens. And, at some point, they come together because the mind cannot open without the heart opening, and the heart cannot open without the mind opening. Really, ultimately, but somehow even that can have its own unfolding and, somehow our own deepening and but ultimately they cannot be separate because they're the same. How can there be an awareness of who we are without there being love? It's
Right.
impossible.
Yeah, I think even beyond the mind opening or the heart opening, it's really about, how shall I say it, discovering and abiding in who we really are, which is, beyond, the categories of love or awakening or even consciousness or awareness. These are just words to describe it. It's a living reality. It's being itself. And when that awakens in us, the natural result is love, compassion, equanimity, peace, happiness, joy. These are the qualities that are, how should I say, released through the being. But who we really are is beyond any of those categories, right? It's pure being itself. It's consciousness itself, right? And so love is, yes, a natural result of waking up. But you don't have to focus on love particularly. Love just naturally blossoms when we realize who we are. Hard to describe, right? We can't say that it is love. We can't say that it is anything, you know. Being itself would be the closest. But yes, love inevitably flowers.
Yeah. Thank you for that question.
Yeah, beautiful questions.
Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for participating. Do we have more questions?
Alvin Mayer says, thank you so much. I was looking for both.
Yes.
She or he was asking a question.
It is what you are.
About beginners.
It is what you are. That's the most important thing.
No, this person was the one who asked about meditation for beginners.
Oh, meditation, sorry. Right.
So she or he were looking for both the meditation instructions and beyond that,
beyond
for who they really are.
Great.
Beyond the practice.
Yes, beyond the practice, yes. Beyond mindfulness. Yes.
So, Stephan, I think we've come to a kind of natural end to this.
Right. Wonderful.
To this conversation and exchange, and
lovely to
being with people live.
To you and to be with people. That was really a genuine conversation, not just an interview, which I really enjoyed.
Yes, I so much really like the just the exchange rather than just asking questions. I find that quite sterile.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, no, I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, so I want to thank you. And these questions or these issues about the role of practice or the paradox of practice ultimately. They're very close to my heart for some reason. They're things that are so alive for me. So I was so happy that that we could have this exchange.
Again, a paradox is how the truth expresses itself. And it really, as you say, it's so alive. The paradox grabs us. It keeps it very alive for us. So don't try to reduce the paradox. Folks, don't try to resolve the paradox. It's irresoluble. Let it be alive. Let it be alive for you. An ongoing question, a living question.
Yes, beautiful. That's really, like an ongoing discovery almost. It's like how is that possible?
Exactly. How is that possible? An ongoing sense of wonder and awe in the face of the mystery.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Grace. Lovely to be with you and everyone. Namaste, and maybe we'll meet again another time.
And thank you so much, Stephan. That was really, truly lovely. And I hope if the image, if Stephan's image was really pixelated and not so clear, that people will be able to listen. Just listen, don't watch, just listen. And because there are such gems in this conversation and in the answers to the questions that I hope you don't get put off by the image. And we'll see. Yeah, we'll see you again soon. if you benefited from this event, from the conversation and the questions and answers, feel free to make a donation. I'm very open to receiving those. And if you'd like to, that's on the living-from-love.com website. And if you'd like to follow up Stephan's offerings more, you can go to stephanbodian.com and you'll find the information there. And if you'd like to sign up for the newsletter about other live online events, you can do that on the Living from Love. So thank you for being with us, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye. Be well. And may you know yourself truly.